Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we bring you day 525 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the Office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician, lawyer, and blogger Mark Feygin. Special thanks today go to WBin, Igloo 1027, and Hello 315. Thank you guys for supporting us, and with this, let's go dive into day 525. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is Wednesday, August 2nd, and time is 1 minute past 10 in Kiev, same time as in Moscow, and we're doing the usual stream, day 525 with Olexiy Arestovych. Good evening, Olexiy. Good evening, everybody. We have about 30,000 starting with us, over 7,000 already clicked the like button. Big ask, the usual, please continue sharing links to that stream in your social media, other groups. Click the like button, each of them brings 10 new eyeballs to the stream, and do not forget to subscribe if you have not done that yet. Let's start with the main news. There are actually several of them. I'm not even sure which one is most important, but let's start with this. The discussion of engaging the principle of collective defense of NATO in regards to Poland intensifying the border fortification efforts with Belarus, and also the conflict of Belarus helicopter crossing the border unauthorized. And there were some pictures of PMC Wagner, or pretending to be so, with chevrons of Wagner on their shoulders near the Polish border post. So looking at that, psychological operation still continues. And can that be gauged as military or military political operation? Well, PSYOPs are often military operations. There are actually clear military operations. The domain is cognitive war according to NATO guiding documents, and they are part of military operations, so they are considered to be military actions. Many people here think that PSYOPs are different, that war is where the missiles fall and the ironcladders and bullets fly. And PSYOP is a useful thing, but it's somewhere to the side of war. No, that's not true. This is actually war. And this kind of war is most important than any other kinds. The one on the battlefield is harder, but PSYOP is more important, most important. And when there are presidents of two countries, or one of them calling himself the president, of Russia and Belarus participate in that. This is a strategic operation which is carried out against the West in general. And when there is an operation against the West in general, this is the war on a strategic level. As we discussed yesterday with Svetlana, the properly elected Belarus president, and yourself, it does have connections with everything that's happening in Africa. Because speaking of grain deal, they are basically pushing world decision-making centers to trading with Russia for Russian wheat, since Ukrainian cannot be supplied. And they're acquiring levers and mechanisms to affect that. Intriguing through Wagner, and with other means they have old connections in Africa, they pushed French from Niger completely, and Europeans in general. And they're behaving pretty rough there. Ultimatums of one country to another country, anti-West coalition, all the junta leaders have raised their heads. And Lukashenko, by the way, is also visiting Africa. And they're attacking borders of NATO, Poland border. They're attacking Ismail, which is 300 yards away from border with Poland. And the West is not exactly active. The West is passive in this case. It is reacting to Moscow actions. And it takes time to make decisions. So for a while, there usually allows to be an opinion that Moscow has figured something out which the West cannot parry. And there is some portion of truth in that. And that's why they're doing these PSYOPs to fortify such ideology, so that part of people would think that there is nothing to do here, Russia is very aggressive, they found special maneuvers and moves, the West cannot do anything with that. Not sure if we can win in Ukraine, so let's surrender. So that's the background that Russia is trying to create. And if you notice, the idea to sit down and do the peace talks, it comes from the Western people, like Kissinger, and not the last people in the West. Well, not only Olexiy, not only from the West, right, but still, in the West, there are people who are playing to that. And then it possibly can create a situation when, under the pressure from social opinions, from your society, governments may start taking decisions in favor of Kremlin. And this pressure can be developed locally in the format of a town or village, and it can be done globally in the format of the whole alliance or dozens of countries. So it is war. It is real war, and there is nothing peaceful about that. We've been about 6 minutes live. 80,000 are with us. Do not forget to subscribe. Okay, another news that is somewhat adjacent to the one we discussed. Putin and Erdogan agreed in the nearest future. Today they, by the way, had a phone conversation to determine time and duration of their meeting. Ukraine and grain deal will be on the agenda of that meeting they're planning. And Peskov, Putin's spokesperson, came out today and said that Moscow is ready to return to grain deal if the West will follow with the terms that Moscow suggested. He did speak about 5 demands that we addressed earlier, but some of them are very unclear and some of them are very unacceptable. And I'm not sure that everything is in a public domain. So they're discussing time and duration. They're not saying Turkey, but maybe it will be Turkey. Do you think Putin will have enough balls to go there? I think he will. And it is important for him to show, to demonstrate that he is not afraid, that when he needs to, he does come and does take decisions outside of his country. And the parameters of that deal, I think the ones they voted publicly, is relaunch Russian ammonia pipe, release Agriculture Bank from financial sanctions, Agriculture Bank of Russia, and allow Russian agriculture products to the international markets. So basically, physically destroy Ukrainian capability to supply grain, but let their own grain out. In this regard, some politicians of the United States, not all, some of them, and in Europe as well, appear to be suicidal. Because over and over, Putin is showing, for example, to the French, that Russian area of influence is expanding in Africa and is kicking France out of Africa. And Macron came out today and said that they're increasing their military budget, but that is not enough, I think. And they're also, at least the France is transferring more Scalp missiles to us. So at least that is good. Then there are other conditions, Olexiy. They were talking about providing some safety zone to the Crimean bridge. So I don't think that everything voiced out is it. I think there are also several conditions that are somewhere hidden. Same situation with Azov fighters. It was not affixed anywhere in print, but Russia is referencing that condition. So it was discussed apparently, and I think it may have been a hidden condition. Yes, and I think, Mark, we will be the ones who will have to put these fellas at their proper place, because nobody else has enough decisiveness to do that. And if need be, we will. And does it affect somehow those ships that still go to Ukrainian ports? Yeah, that's kind of funny. They announced a complete naval blockade, yet 3 ships under different flags came to Ukrainian ports, unloaded, loaded, and left. So this seems to be somewhat fakery, and it shows that Russia leaving the grain deal is a special action, is a special sort of a psyop in this case. Especially that, given there are 3 ships that are coming, there was Greece, Israel, and I think Turkey was the 3rd country, and they didn't want to quarrel with any of them. So Russia closed their eyes to these vessels, even though about a week ago they yelled at some ship, "We consider you as military target." I remember that was in the news on bad English. They were saying, "What is your cargo? Do you have military cargo on the board?" So these, for some reason, were not monitored. I guess it is very selective in terms of naval blockade. And I think their ideation is simple. And the answer to that operation that Russia is trying to pull is very basic. You have to really kick their ass fast so that they would take that loudspeaker and shove it up there, you know where. And for that, Ukraine needs to have more military support. But what do we hear? We hear that some of the means that were dedicated to Ukraine are going to be transported to Taiwan and Argentina. And that can be qualified as trying to push Ukraine to certain terms. So you think it's sort of blackmail? I cannot call it blackmail. It should not be called that, but this is basically our conditions. That's what they're saying. People who are providing about half of our budget and majority of military equipment, they're indicating that they have their own plans and they're implementing these plans into life. You think these plans are to settle the war by the end of 23? I think this is a hypothesis, a valid one, but we do not know for sure. But when people are saying, yeah, of course, there is a biggest war since the Second World War that you guys are fighting, but let us give some jets to Taiwan, for example, instead. And Taiwan in general is not in a similar hot war situation as we are. And also Taiwan is a rather rich country which can actually afford to buy some things, unlike Ukraine at this point. But still, yeah, this was announced, so this is a hint to Ukraine to be more manageable, and it's nobody that can confirm which conditions are being proposed at the moment. Also, look, Roman Pope Francis came out and said that there should be searched creative solutions to resolve the war in Ukraine. So everybody is coming out of the woodwork and trying to affect that process. What do you think about the role of Pope? How many tank divisions does Pope have? That's what Stalin asked. I'm asking too. Well, he doesn't. He doesn't have any tank divisions. And the God is on the side of big battalions. So some degree of peacekeeping, of course, he has. He is one of the biggest moral authorities for 1.5 billion people, Catholic churchgoers. But this specific pope was accused of being too left politically. And in Ukraine, his words are being taken with a lot of caution, even though he still has some authority as the spiritual leader of Catholics. However, he was already being worked with, and Zelensky visited him, and after conversation with Pope, he said, with all my respect, our plan works better for us. So we'll see if Vatican will come with something new. I doubt it, but he did mention creative decisions. So I wonder what it is. Turn Ukrainian flag upside down, rewrite Ukrainian anthem. What goes there? Transfer Ukrainian into Latin. What other creative solutions might he have? I don't know, for God's sake, maybe something simple like take off the arrest warrant from Putin. Mark, this is not a creative solution. No, they may think it's creative. Right, it's a very straightforward decision. 110,000 with us. We've been live for 14 minutes. I remind you to please continue sharing links in your social media to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the privateer station. And let's get to the main question that is connected with everything we discussed, but has a certain standalone quality. Saudi Arabia is going to host peace plan talks in Jeddah, and Ukraine will be participating. By the way, United States will also participate, probably on the level of national security advisors, ministers of foreign affairs are going to be there. Tehran also supported that initiative, as we discussed. Russia is not invited, at least not yet. Although Mexico, which is partaking in that conference, did appeal to invite Russian side as well. Moscow has already squirted about that, but regardless, situation is as is, and they'll be discussing the peace plan of Zelensky. That's what was announced, and it seems that Yermak already came out and commented on that. What do you think will come out of this Congress? We mentioned that one of the reasons for it is possible difficulties that come out of the grain deal cancellation. In these 2 days, what became clear is that our president talked in front of our diplomats and media and said that one of the main tasks is to host a global peace summit this autumn. And summit in Saudi Arabia is probably a part of that preparation, of the preparation to the bigger summit. And that follows from his speech. And it includes 10 points that we discussed before. Reparations, withdrawal of Russian troops, etc. And remember, there was a Crimean summit where about 50 countries were attracted to. Today, the task of the president, the way he sees it and sets it, is holding the Global Peace Summit to create a sort of political coalition to force Kremlin to a peace solution that is acceptable for Ukraine. And as he said in this conference, the global south will be represented. So this is antithesis to Crimean influence in the countries of Africa and South America. This effort has started a while ago. Our foreign minister Kuleba visited Africa pretty much following Lavrov route and times. And our task is to pull these countries to our side or make them neutral, or at least sow a seed of doubt in them in supporting Moscow. So it is our attempt to play against anti-West colonial rhetoric that Russia is peddling. And agreement of many countries to that plan actually indicates that there is some hope. Otherwise, they would not agree to even participate in it. But we understand that as any coalition of governments, each country is there to pursue their own interests, and we understand the core would be the grain deal for this one. Today in the news, it did show up that grain prices go up. They did go up 6% after the night shelling of Ismail. And this is just one port being shelled, and world prices went up 6%. So this is a very sensitive story, and it's very critical for many countries in Africa and Middle East. Saudi Arabia was selected for a reason for that conference. They consider themselves responsible for many of the events happening in the Middle East and in Africa. We'll see. What we're discussing now, these are just general contours, and there'll be more details coming through as we'll be approaching it and as it will unfold. Now we see that it already is creating a global coalition to make Russia accept conditions for the peace that are acceptable or proposed by Zelensky. And good thing we'll have France, Germany. We'll see who else will come. We'll see who will be there from the global East as well. That's curious. And we're trying to be active. We're trying to take an active position here. I already mentioned that we dropped the ball in a couple places. Like I mentioned, Russia, for example, transferred their military-industrial complex for 3 shifts for the duration of war, and they figured out gray schemas to resupply critical components for their military. And we didn't do that. We failed to do it on time, but now we're trying to go leaps and bounds to catch up. But while Russia is organizing coups in Africa, we're doing Global Peace Summit. and the next platform might be United Nations, or we'll see how it goes. Usually, political autumn is very hot, and the events are already running, galloping. It's not even autumn now, just August, right? But we already see a flurry of activities. And I think the key months will be October and November. That's where things will come to fruition. There'll be grain deals, there'll be coalitions and decisions made. But both sides are playing wide. Russia is playing wide, and we're playing far and wide too. This conflict is not regional for a long time. It's been a global conflict for a long time already. If this conflict and the word global is being pronounced in the same sentence by our American allies, it's already a global conflict. And that's the way it should be viewed. All right, before we go to the map, we have 125,000 with us. Let's go to one more situation in Africa, Niger. World Bank had paused credit operations to Niger, or any financial operations with them. And yeah, guys, don't pick on me for putting the stress on the wrong syllable. Don't be ultra grammar Nazis on this. So, with one word, situation there is spiraling. Neighborhood countries are trying to return the legal administration that was deposed and that was more pro-West and connected with France. And the ears in the recent coup are definitely bearing Moscow earmarks. So do you think Niger has any chance of changing that, or Moscow as a player will not allow that country to play that situation back? Well, Moscow is not the single player, right? For now, we see that junta or whatever came to power is pushing out European citizens. There is evacuation underway, and there is a coalition of similar juntas in other countries in Africa that are sort of forming coalition, and they're reacting to the other coalition that is more pro-West. And they're basically saying that if you will try to resolve it militarily, we'll bring our troops too, and it'll cost you with blood. So there is actually Putin's success to organize a coalition that is threatening a war. 5 countries that are ready to wage war with their neighbors if they're trying to roll back whatever Putin has created in Niger. So it's interesting. It's a very rapid development, and given that Russia did succeed in Central African Republic, in Mali, they have a chance of keeping their success in Niger as well. And it's the similar model. They're exploiting their population in the same manner that Putin does, and abusing the natural resources in their own favor. So it's a similar mode. Alike sees alike, right? Okay, let's bring the map, our favorite deep state. Oh, where do we start? Let's look at Kremenная Svatova, the northeast segment. After many conversations, Mark and myself decided to rely on deep state map for this purpose. It is usually a very high quality map, and they're very conservative in posting changes to the front. They actually have a special note that if you have different materials that go against what we show on the map, please provide them to us so we can correct the error. So I want to say that at 10 p.m. Kiev, when we voice the current situation on the map, situation has already changed, and it likely will be announced in the morning. So bear with us, we are a little bit behind the actual situation on the front, and this is not because we are evil. This is because we're working with approved maps by Deep State, and we're following the principle of do no harm. All right, so what was there as of the morning today? You can see Novoselovka, Kuzemovka from Krivosheivska. It's, if you zoom in a little, it's the middle from Kupiansk to Kremennoye. This is a little bit above. You can see, yeah, here it is in the middle. So you can see the arrows, they're trying to undertake some actions in this area. They were kicked a bit and they failed to progress. In general, one can qualify that the wide offensive actions on the whole front failed, and now they're concentrating on 3 to 5 spots on this front, perhaps 3 to 5 kilometers each, and we managed to stop them and also do counter-offensive operations as well. And they're poking and prodding, looking for other ways to perhaps find weak spots in our defense. And it's almost daily that we hear more active actions in Serebranskoye Lesnichestvo, of course, and then we can go further down to Bakhmut. There are some active actions above it, and there is some progress of Ukrainian troops at the bottom, at the south. And some already are noticing that Kleshevka and Andreevka, the lower 6 diamonds, the 2 middle of them are already in the gray zone. That now indicates that Ukraine is already pushing forward, and that Russian troops already withdrew behind the railroad, and railroad has a certain tactical advantage in this area, so it's interesting. They have aggregated enough resources, enough to even push us, but they are retreating. They're fighting, but they're retreating. And they tried to turn Andreevka into some fortified area, and we managed to push them out, which is interesting, and it's curious to observe what happens next. Then, if we go to Avdiivka, we actually pushed them out in a couple of spots where they were actively attacking before. They still try to press us, but the situation is that 100 yards can change hands a couple times during a day. And they're mostly fighting in 3 spots there, so that's where that's going on. A bit to the south, they're trying to move, and that's where you can see Oputne, Pervomayskaya, Nevelskaya, a little bit below Avdiivka at 2 o'clock on this map. You can see a couple arrows, but they're not succeeding. In Marinka, nothing is successful for them. They still maintain some action, but that's it. But in the south, it turns interesting, because if you look at the map, you can see the blue area of active actions, as it is called. This kind of goes around Staromayorskaya to the south, to the east. We're getting more territories, and today there were some statements that we have captured more settlements around, and since Russian troops were trying to create certain purchase in the area, we are encircling them and flowing around them. So a day or 2 from now, they may be in a very difficult situation on those purchases that they had. And if you look down, they actually have a couple of fortified positions, and if they are taken, then it will be a whole other story for them. I cannot say how long exactly, but we will take them, and it will be a qualitative jump in that situation, and Russian troops, despite all their efforts, will be very sad. Also, there is a special diamond in Kermenchik. They have some troops there. It's one of the second-tier diamonds, and they cannot move them from there because we are creating certain threats in the area, so they cannot send anything to Staromayorskaya, to that blue active action region, because they're held tight otherwise. And you can see that interesting tongue that's sticking out between Blyutne and Staromayorskaya. It's smack in the middle of the map, surrounded by blue area on both sides. That perch will not exist for long. And they will need to make a decision, because very soon they'll have to withdraw to the main fortification lines down at the bottom. But if they waste everything now in the field, they will not have much resources to defend the main fortifications with. And it's interesting, as we are approaching the main defense lines, one would think it will be the main fighting happening there, but it might not be so, because if you ran out of troops before you have a chance to entrench, then it's really difficult to hold these fortifications. And if we scroll down to the left, there is more expansion near Robotina, near Prokopovka, closer towards Tokmak. You can see we're already touching some of the fortification lines. And the motion and the efforts that we exert on them, both in Lapkova and Petykhatki on the left flank at 9 o'clock and at 5 o'clock with that blue area. One can say that Russia has expanded a lot of troops already, and they're still trying to push, do some counteroffensive to try to push Ukrainians back. And they might waste the last of their resources doing that, because we will repel those. And I cannot say there'll be a complete collapse of the front at the end, but after they run out of steam here, there'll be a qualitative change. And we'll be able to cautiously use that term that there is a whole different phase now, especially in Staromayovsk area. And Antonov Bridge, our territory, liberated territory, is still under our troops there, and we are still attacking the enemy sitting on the left bank, and our special forces crossed the river on boats. And by the way, in Crimea there were a bunch of good explosions today. So supposedly warehouses with ammo. We also were shelled this night. Ismail. By the way, right now Russian jets are taking positions in Caspian Sea to launch missiles, so we probably have going to have a military loud night as well. Okay, so that's as far as the actual active actions go. We're done with the map now, all right? 140,000 with us, 50,000 likes already. Please subscribe to Feygin, to Olexiy Arestovych channel, and do not forget to share links and subscribe. We've been live for 30 minutes. The first country that closed their embassy in Moscow is Iceland. They made an announcement that the decision to pause the activity of Iceland in Moscow is not to treat as breaking of any diplomatic relations. It is a pause, and when the war will be stopped, then the embassy will return. But the embassy is closed, and it's interesting. Iceland had some pretty tight relations with oligarchs in Russia before Russia started this military offensive, and that's been gone for a while now because of the sanctions. But do you think there'll be more isolations that Moscow will face? Mark, problem is that Iceland, a small country that made its mind, can afford to do that. For bigger players who are more connected in business and politics and other areas, they'll probably keep their embassies. They have a lot more things to consider, and I suspect the actions of Iceland will be a singular, although a very nice example of strong will. I would love it to be repeated by others, but I have my reservations. All right, let's go to the next news. They're writing about some conflict between Poland and Ukraine. And they're talking about some diplomatic conflict. Well, not much of a conflict, Mark. Polish minister said Ukraine is not thankful enough, and our foreign affairs called on the Polish ambassador and gave him a note. They called upon our ambassador and gave our ambassador a note. And it was said that our relations are not in the best situation right now, but Zelensky came out and said that we will not let certain hotshots break the brotherly union that exists between our countries. So our president qualified that as too rapid, too fast of some hotshot actions of some hotshots. Well, it's full moon mark. But if to speak seriously, there are some disconnects. There are some international trade matters. There are some other things that we have, and some questions from history that are not regulated that should be, and we probably should have taken them and regulated them, but for some reason they're not. I will not speak to Poles here about Poles here, but Ukraine definitely could get its act together and address several of those things that are in our purview. In Poland, I think today or yesterday there was the day of Warsaw Uprising, and this is a key symbolic date for them, and that's when, let's say, people on the right in Poland usually have questions to Ukraine around that date on the overall patriotic wave that they experience at that time. And here one needs very wise government politics and needs to close certain matters. And it's easy to close it. You can create a joint commission between two countries, invite scientists from both sides, historians and independent ones like Timothy Snyder, and you create the timeline and history reading that is accepted by scientists and is made official on both sides. And then you honor the dead, you honor the victims. And then, of course, on the Ukrainian side, there are some hotshots who come out and say Poles were also killing our troops and our citizens back in the Second World War. So, and that rhetoric can cost a lot to both sides. My opinion is we need to settle all screaming questions to avoid escalation of any of them, to preclude these additional complications that we're facing sometimes. It seems strange to me too, Olexiy, that despite these rather warm and close relations that you guys have between Poland and Ukraine, right now from time to time, there is some stress coming out. And in Poland, I think they have an election campaign, right? That they have elections in autumn. So maybe something is related to that because competition and different parties and political play. Of course, that's a play on the old painful questions. Poles are not too different from us, and they're not too different from politicians of any other country. Before elections, the rhetoric intensifies, and that's why I'm saying that it would be nice to remove the targets for such rhetoric. What, we don't have anything else to deal with? We are fighting. Polish border is already in question. And finding a way to quarrel, that's the last thing should be on our mind. So we might want to consider to remove certain areas of tension. It's not good otherwise, right? Smart people prevent these statements by certain political groups with their political actions, and also resolving an old problem that has been festering for a while. All right. Old conflicts. We've been live for about 38 minutes. We're approaching the end of today's stream. At the very end of the stream, we will not congratulate you with tomorrow's birthday. Tomorrow, you can come reach me tomorrow and congratulate me tomorrow. Yeah, you can write to me, you can like me in my posts. Olexiy has birthday tomorrow, and in neither of our countries it is acceptable to congratulate people with their birthdays before it happens. Right, in about 1 hour and 22 minutes you can proceed. Last thing that I wanted to say, probably at the last moment, some people actually calculated the ratings. Who has what rating between Ukraine and Russia, actually on Ukrainian YouTube, and you can see that my stream is number 1 out of all Russian language streamers. I'm usually ignoring these works, but this is a very gigantic work. Mark, I would not send you too far down this path. all of these political bloggers are by default usually a means to an end to different political parties. So all these polls have interesting connotations. Well, it's okay. I still wanted to say that it seems like I'm number 2 out of all bloggers and number 1 out of the Russian. Alex Danov is the first, and I'm the second. All right, so let's meet on Saturday, and on Saturday at 10 p.m. we'll address everything that unfolds until then. Please do not forget to subscribe to the channels if you have not done that yet. Share links, click the like button, and we appreciate you following us and sticking with us on these streams. Goodbye, everybody. See you, Olexiy. Good luck, everybody.